your pro day.
Not my first rodeo.
Not your first rodeo? Okay. What's going on, everyone? This is the Aggie Game Day Extra Podcast. I'm Travis Brown, Senior Texas A&M sportswriter, alongside Nicole Griffith, sports reporter, KBTX. How you doing, Nicole?
Good. We're in the field. We're outside the podcast studio.
I know.
We are.
They let us out of our cage.
We're on location here at the Coolidge Performance Center. It's been a good day so far. Pro Day just wrapped up.
Okay, so we just got done with your favorite term, the Underwear Olympics. Like, what?
It's not my favorite term.
Just pro days in general. Do you like, dislike? What's kind of your thoughts? Coverage of pro day.
Yeah, so it's always interesting, right? Because you don't know exactly what the numbers are. You don't get the results right away. It's not like you're watching a scoreboard and that was the result, that was the time, as like a track meet, right? We have to wait to get those results from the scouts, from the athletic department, unless we're hand holding and we're running the stopwatch. But I think pro day is great. I think it's a way for one last shot for people who maybe don't get the invite to the combine, who still want to pursue football, and maybe they'll surprise some people, and maybe they didn't have such a great season, or they did have a good season but they didn't get the combine invite. This is one extra way for them to be able to show off their speed, their power, their agility, their versatility, really anything that they want to show in front of nearly 80 NFL representatives.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool day. I think from a coverage standpoint, I get a little tired with it. I get a little grumpy. I need a nap and a snack.
It's mundane.
It is. It's a little repetitive, but it is important. I mean, nothing is cooler too than the scene that we had today with Nick Scorton out here, because it's a storyline that we've talked about a lot. He's a hometown boy. He's from Bryan, and so when we were up there in the balcony behind us watching down, his whole family was right there next to us, cheering him on. And when he was lifting the bench press, they were cheering him on. When he was doing the 3-cone drills, so that's a special moment, especially for him. And I mean, I go back and think about maybe not since Myles Garrett in 2017 Pro Day I've seen a guy who comes back and just kind of reworked his body. He looked jacked. He was ripped. Myles Garrett, when he came back, I mean, don't get me wrong, Myles Garrett was a monster when he was at the field for A&M, but when he came back, he was there was abs on top of abs. And so I think that, seeing these guys and like Mike Elko said, go away, kind of realize, okay, this is a business now, and the work that they do and when they come back to kind of get to show off their speed, their agility, their size, it's a cool moment all the way around.
And that's why Myles Garrett has the contract that he does now, right?
Yes.
So maybe that's
because of the abs on top of the abs.
Maybe that's a little foreshadowing into Nick Scorton's future.
Maybe it is. So before we get into the seriousness, the other cool thing about Pro Day is that they have little uniforms, but they can wear whatever cleats and stuff. They're not bound by Adidas. I have one footwear shoe, one game that stood out to me. Did you notice any of the footwear? Was there one that stood out to you?
Honestly, I wasn't really looking at that. Unfortunately, I was shooting the video, so
Fair.
I was looking at the faces because they don't have their jerseys on, right? So I'm like, okay, which player is this? Which player is this?
Olympics.
Yes. So I was watching. I was trying to make sure that I got their reps and their faces down. So, but I do know what did they have? Were they gold?
The gold. That's the ones I was going to talk about.
Right.
They were bright gold. I think they might have been Nike. They might have been Adidas. I don't know. But anytime anybody comes out to Pro Day, some kind of debut, a playoff game, and they're wearing bright gold cleats, they're there. They're mean business. You can't just wear gold cleats and not have a good day.
And he felt like he did have a good day in the L cone, and so, or the 3L, or the
L cone, the 3-cone drill.
Yep.
Kind of. It's the shuttle run, but with a bend, that kind of thing. Yeah, he did like the agility he had there. Who stood out to you? Who were some of the top performers or people that had your eye?
I think Scorton stood out. That was the person that everyone wanted to watch. I was watching him warm up. He waited until they were doing the defensive drills. He passed on the jumps and the 40-yard dash and whatnot. He actually had an explicit that he said about the 40-yard dash in the press conference that we will not be airing. But I think he stood out. He looks quick. He looks fast. He looks like he's trying to prove something. I feel like the defense really how the season ended last year, the defense wants to prove themselves, and he was part of that. And so now he's slimmed the weight down. They talked about his lack of sack numbers is a concern. Elko was then asked about that in the press conference, and he's like, he's a disruptor so many other ways than just by getting sacks. And so I think when those three were, when the defensive line drills were going, you saw all eyes were on that in here in the field.
I think that's a good point, because he also mentioned too the amount of times that Nick Scorton was facing a double team or a chip, and was having just one-on-one blocking against him. I think that speaks really great for Nick Scorton. I think that doesn't necessarily speak great for someone like Shamar Stewart or maybe even Shamar Turner, who we're going to get a little bit more one-on-one blocking because Nick Scorton was picking up the double teams. And Shamar Stewart was also asked about his sack production, and he said he realizes that that's something that people are talking about, and he's just out here to prove that that was just kind of an anomaly. That was just last season, and he is that disruptive force that Mike Elko and Shamar Stewart were talking about.
Yeah, and so now they'll just keep training for the next month. They'll see how it turns out. The draft is in 4 weeks from today, which is crazy to think it's in Green Bay, of all places.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen those when they have them outside, like in Nashville and Detroit. I mean, Detroit's, I guess, kind of up, and it's in the summer, but still, it just in my mind, Green Bay is just always snow covered.
Lambeau in the end of April. Hopefully, the snow is melted by then.
I would hope so. I mean, it was in Detroit. That's like close, so I don't know. But there is some more guys beyond those three that could potentially hear their name called, or at least be an undrafted free agent. To me, Ja'Day Walker, who we talked about with the shoes, really good on the three-cone elbow drill, and Trey Calhoun, really fast, the tight end. He saw action sporadically and was maybe a little bit more of a blocker for the Aggies. But, man, he went out there and ran a mid-4-second 40. And for a tight end to move that, you would think someone might give a chance on that.
Well, Ja'Day Walker also said that when he introduced himself to the NFL representatives, that he said, "My name's Ja'Day Walker, and I play wide receiver and special teams." So he's putting that into existence, that he is willing to play special teams no matter at whatever level.
And he did at A&M with getting some punt blocks, and was able to make a name for himself on that punt team, which I think, if you get a shot, it's kind of like making the NCAA tournament. If you can just get in the tournament and get a shot, who knows what you can do with a lot of these guys. If the team just gives them a shot, who knows? And I think that's something that Ja'Day is certainly not afraid to look for.
Hey y'all, it's Max, and if you've been watching the pod, you know this by now, that we have a new official sponsor of the Aggie Game Day Extra podcast. And it is a familiar face. You know him, you have seen him around Aggieland for many, many years. Say hello to C&J Barbecue. Now, I don't know if there are many of you out there, but if you live in the Brazos Valley and you have not been to C&J Barbecue yet, what on earth are you guys doing? The crew at C&J started out smoking just about 20 pounds of meat a day in a tiny gas station on a Harvey Road. Now, they serve over 2,200 pounds every single day across 3 locations. So you know it's good. They've fed President Bush, catered for Willie Nelson. Yeah, Willie. But most importantly, they've been feeding Aggies and locals for over 40 years. In fact, I had myself some at a catering event last weekend, and the brisket was absolutely amazing. Don't even get me started on the sides and the appetizers, because Justin is always cooking up some amazing stuff. Just get there, see, smell, and taste for yourself. Tell them the guys sent you. C&J Barbecue, a family tradition.
Wrapping up here. Sorry,
your voice is.
I know.
Are you okay?
I'm a little allergy-y
All right.
Today. But there is still Diamond Sports this weekend as well. Both A&M softball and baseball are home. Softball takes a little bit of a break. You've been out to softball probably a little bit more than I have. Just kind of what's the general vibes around the softball team?
Well, I would just say they're good. They're 5th in the country. So from this recording, we're recording this on Thursday of Pro Day, but they're coming off 2 midweek run rule games. So they run ruled Sam Houston 10-0 on Tuesday, and then they run ruled North Texas UNT last night 12-4. Games, they go quick. I
love covering softball.
I was shooting, and the softball game on Tuesday was done. I was back in the studio editing, and the baseball game was in the 5th inning.
I love covering softball.
And so I was
so
like,
great.
wow, this has been great. But no, they're awesome. Their lineup, they're explosive. Trisha has kind of moved the lineup around a little bit. If you're not super familiar with it, it was Kendall Powell that leads, and then Coco Woolley. But now Coco Woolley has gone down a little bit, and then they've moved up Amari Harper, who's really hot right now. Maya Perez has been on a tear.
She's been on a little bit of a power streak, hasn't she?
Yes. She 7 or 8 home runs. They have power. They're an offensive team. They're pitching. Emily Kennedy, she's their leader. I haven't seen her pitch in a while. She obviously I was at 2 midweek games, so she didn't pitch then. But they're off. They're not off this weekend, but they don't have an SEC series this
Royal
weekend.
Marymount is who they have this weekend, which a little weird timing in the middle of the season like that, but
yes. So it might be some quick softball games, but then they're at Georgia next weekend, and then they host LSU on their next home SEC series is the 11th to 12th weekend.
Yeah, and so on the baseball side of things, I think the biggest news to come out of Michael Early's availability today, which our own Tyler Shaw was over at while we were here at Pro Day, Caden Sorrell should be back in the lineup, and that's kind of been a problem. They've had to platoon some people out in left field, and just finding that solid left fielder. Caden Sorrell was going to be that guy probably from the get-go, but he had a hamstring injury that's kept him out, so it'll be interesting to see how much he's available, if he starts, if he's a pinch hitter, how that kind of all works out for them is going to be interesting. But that's a big get for the Aggies, who have shuffled through the lineup and tried to find a little bit of consistency.
Yeah, and I know they're winless in conference play. They welcome Kentucky to town this weekend. I don't want to give up on this team just yet. I mean, sure, maybe the expectation of winning a national championship has very much dwindled, but it is still. I still think it's early, and I still think this team can still pull themselves together and show that they're not just gonna because if it's gonna be a long season if they just keep being 500.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, like you said, I don't think we're gonna have to look forward to any 14-day stays in Omaha this year, which to me, I've told people every other year, great. Let's just give me a year off so I can recuperate from those 14 days last year. But yeah, defensive issues were kind of a problem early. With Gavin Grahovic coming out, they had to move Wyatt Hensler over to third base. He's played that a lot, but not recently. And so there was kind of a rotating group of people. Sawyer Farr at second base. They kind of settled on Ben Royo, who is a glove-first guy all the way. But he had a little power. He had a home run in the midweek game this week. Went, I believe, 2 for 2 with then a walk mixed in there and a sack bunt that he almost beat out. And so it's a cool story because he's a guy that even early in him said, when he came in here, they said, hey, you're probably not going to be a big playing time guy, but if you want to come here from Rice and be a part of this program, we can definitely use you. And they used him as a pinch runner early, but he because of his glove, his defense, he's found a way into the starting lineup, and it's going to be probably his position to lose. So then that kind of puts in, okay, is it Sawyer Farr that comes out? Terrence Keel is pretty much locked up right field right now. Just kind of finding a little bit of that consistency moving forward in the lineup, and you would think that Sorrell and maybe even Royo can do that for him.
And I think getting 1 to 2 games against Kentucky will help a lot with confidence, with the offense. Jace Lavalette, I feel like we've been on Jace home run watch since last.
Cameras poised at all times.
It's the stress that man is giving us. It is,
and probably under himself too.
Yes, just go up there, hit a home run. It's okay. It's all going to be okay. Just make sure that we're rolling when it happens. So, I think a good palate cleanser against Kentucky would really help.
Yeah, and starting pitching has been great. They're a top 5 program in starting pitching this year with Ryan Prager, with Justin Lampkin, and Miles Patton. Bullpen, a little shaky, but you have Clayton Freshcorn, who went out midweek this week. He had a good outing, and he'd struggled a little bit. You have Caden McCoy, had a really good outing, and even Brad Root has started. He gave up 2 runs, but really one of them wasn't. It was just a bloop off the hands hit. Things may be settling down for the bullpen a little bit, so I think bullpen consistency in the lineup, if they can get those 2 things together this weekend against a Kentucky team that isn't ranked, then maybe they're pointing in the right direction. Then lastly, we have to go to football yesterday. We got to talk to Mike Elko a little bit more about this team. Nick Scorton said these guys seem to be pointing in the right direction when we talked to him. But I think the biggest thing was Ruben Owens coming out. He's back from injury. He's getting reps, especially with Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels out. What stood out to you about kind of some of that conversation about Ruben and his return to action?
Yeah, I felt like he was very mentally tough, right? You would ask him questions like, how did you get through being down from your injury? He's like, I just did it, like he has 2 dogs that were his buds, I guess, and he had a really good quote. I thought it kind of took me aback. He goes, your team doesn't need you, which is like twofold, right? Like the team does need you, but he's like, they don't need me. Like, it'll just be next man up. So I have to just get through this and take advantage of every opportunity that I can get. And I'm really impressed by him. I think he's really excited to the spring, is the appetizer to the fall. And but Elko says the spring is when you get better at football because there's more padded practices. And so being able to see him go through a healthy spring will be very helpful, especially in that running back room that has had so many injuries.
What I'm hearing is that I think at spring practice every time we need to get chips and queso. Like, if this is the appetizer to the fall.
Well, that's how I feel about spring, because you're like, oh, but it's April. Like,
right.
we're out at the practice fields. Oh,
it would make me so much happier.
It's March.
Yeah, it's March.
Oh my gosh.
Almost April. It would be so much better though if you walked out and they just had like a little tray of chips and queso for you, or maybe like a garlic knot, whatever your favorite appetizer is.
Yes.
A little triple dipper, if you will. Yes, I think what you said about Ruben is true, because a lot of people said he might be the number 1 guy going into last season, and then Le'Veon Moss came out and led the SEC in rushing yards for a while, and he's out with injury. We'll miss the spring. Amari Daniels will miss the spring, and Mike Elko said it's all about timing, getting his timing back in these spring games, because it's him and EJ Smith right now, just like it was in the bowl game, and seeing how those guys can kind of develop and pick up behind an offensive line that returns everybody. So you would think running game is secure, and it's a position where he has a little bit of wiggle room to kind of get back into the swing of things. So I think I can't talk anymore. I think this is when we need to go ahead and cut this off.
I think we're good. Yes,
we are good.
You're
yes.
As much as I love listening to you talk.
I know. It's not even like a deep, sexy voice. It's just gross.
Raspy.
It's just gross. So from the Graham Athletic Complex in the Coolidge Practice Center here at Texas A&M, this is the Aggie Game Day Extra podcast. For Nicole Griffith, I'm Travis Brown. We'll see you next week.